Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Duke of Italy, favorite lo-fi music YouTuber, and welcome back to Classics Month. It is December. We have concluded with nothing but black metal November, and today we're talking about music for old people. And I guess this makes me an old person because this is some really good stuff. So if any of you out there are into jazz, or I posted this on Facebook because I haven't posted a video on Facebook in forever, this video is for you. It's for family members. It's for anybody out there who's on the older side or who just doesn't like metal. That's okay. You know, I post about metal probably too much this year, and I'll probably do it again too much next year. That's just the cycle of things. Speaking of metal, I'm going to be uploading one of my band's live videos, hopefully at some point very soon. I just got to get the approval from my band. And of course, I'm doing some dirty things, just talking about this without their approval. But it's okay. I don't really care because I want this video up so bad. But, you know, that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about Time Out by the Dave Brubeck Quartet. This is Classics Month, and this is a classic jazz album. Cool jazz. Good stuff. It has a lot of interesting elements behind it. Of course, it's called Time Out. The actual concept behind this album is that it messes around with time signature a whole bunch. It doesn't do that an insane amount. If you're like into more progressive music nowadays, you're not going to be given like some crazy several time signature changes that just hit constantly. You're not going to get like Dream Theater or anything like that, but you will have 2 or 3 time signature changes per track here. But a couple of the tracks do stick to 4/4, and it sticks to it very well. And there are some actual polyrhythms here that work so well. And one thing I can commend this little cool jazz subgenre for really well is that I can include all these intricate, really complex layers, yet it doesn't sound cheesy or nerdy or like a loser would play it like Dream Theater would. And it's just a 4-piece here with Dave Brubeck on piano, as well as there being saxophone, bass, and drums. Now the bass, it really just kind of plays walking bass lines or keeps the rhythm the whole time. It doesn't really do that much that I would find to be particularly interesting. But the other 3 members do trade off with some exceptional playing just overall. And it's full of subtlety, interesting melodic moments that you don't really get from normal jazz that much. There's a lot of elements you can really pick out really easily and identify super easily, and it's a lot of stuff you can really get with as well. So I'm just going to get into the track list to kind of give you guys a rundown of what it's like. You begin with Blue Rondo a la Turk, which is a song that is kind of inspired by Balkan music, but namely Turkish music, because, you know, Turk is in the title of the song. And it has a ballsy start, starting with the syncopated unison 9/8 rhythm that goes on for a couple minutes, and it is one of the most interesting things you'll hear in jazz for a long time because it doesn't just go into a groove. There's no walking bass line. It's all in unison, and it's super energetic just to start off. It's very striking, but it doesn't sound silly or misplaced or anything. It sounds rather fitting for what you hear next. But it is absolutely intense. The playing is absolutely cracked from everyone involved in the quartet with these subtle additions everywhere, namely from like the drumming, until eventually this really chill walking bass line comes in. Then Paul Desmond holds it all down on alto sax, and he adds this really subtle, really nice melodic solo. It's simply just a fantastic opener, and of course this 9/8 unison part comes back around to give a final dose of energy back into the track, and it's really interesting how it works like that. But it's funny because they add it in like it's so easy. Like everything on this album sounds lax and easy despite feeling very intense probably about a third of the time. And following this is the track Strange Meadowlark. And it's a track that is forefronted by Brubeck's gorgeous piano playing. He starts off with this really long legato solo that sounds honestly amazing. You could just take that out and make it its own song, and I don't think anyone would complain because it's simply just a beautiful piece of music. And it goes into this really relaxed 4/4 swing, just not out of nowhere. It seemingly transitions super smoothly. That's one nice thing about this album is that it never will transition in a way that feels too striking or too out of the blue unless it really wants to. And normally it doesn't really want to do that. So it actually goes very smooth. It's very cool. And Brubeck actually comes in for a second solo where he gets really minimalist. He'll have these big pounding chords, and then he'll just go into these singular eighth notes, and he'll switch between staccato and legato like it's so easy. And it sort of drifts back into that intro section, and it ends beautifully, really justifying the track length here. It shows a really nice structure behind the whole thing. And the following track after this is the iconic, amazing Take 5, which is funny because the credits for the writing of the song is actually given to Paul Desmond, even though his main contribution is the main melody of the song, which is actually only the beginning and end of the song. Which, if you don't know, look it up and you'll probably recognize the song because it's just amazing. This melody is super slick, it's super cool, but don't think it's just going to hold on that for too long. While you would probably expect a transition that goes into a solo of Paul Desmond where he just shoots off for the rest of the track, or maybe it switches between him and the bassist, we actually transition from this really dense 5/4 rhythm section into a rhythm section that is held down strictly from the bass and from Brubeck's piano playing, until we get one of a couple really legendary drum solos on this whole album here. I have a problem sometimes with some jazz drum solos, like Art Blakey, namely, is a jazz drummer. I don't like his solos that much because he kind of just does triplets all over the kit, and it's just not my favorite type of drum solo. I'd actually rather hear something like that in metal, but even in metal, it gets old really fast. But here, it goes so minimalist but yet so hard hitting. It really explores like the texture of the drum itself. He'll shoot all over, but he knows when to be fast and when to be really, really slow. But the name of the game on this drum solo here is intensity. He knows exactly how to hold back and how much to hold back. And it's that little bit of natural reverb that hits when he cracks on the snare, which is actually the most appealing part. And the repetition of parts of the solo really builds up and it starts rolling like this sort of like machine-like quality. And it's really hypnotic and probably one of the most iconic moments of this whole album. And it's really what, for me, takes this track from just a melodic jazz piece that has a bit of a poppy flair to it into this 5/4 monolith of a track here. And as cool as it is, it's also incredibly tense. And when the melody comes back in, it's actually really benefiting the structure of the track as a whole because it builds up so much extra energy. And next is the track 3, To Get Ready. And it's kind of what this album is known for. It's nothing but super cool, tight playing. And there is a waltz that comes in because it's 3/4 time, and it gets broken up constantly. And it's still very energetic, but it has a lot more of a relaxed nature to it. It's a track that you can zone out a bit more to, but the energy is what carries its momentum. It's not face melting like something like Take 5, but it still carries its own weight. And Brubeck's solo here is probably the big star of the show. It gets more and more intense until it reaches sort of a breaking point, and then it mellows all the way back down to the intro section again, which is very satisfying. And it shows a lot of really interesting dynamics in one track that I think other jazz musicians still need to learn from. But one element about this album so far that I really love, and it's something that's going to just be legendary forever, is that it has some really significant dynamics. When it solos, you can tell it's soloing. There are points where literally everything else would drop out or be just on the one, and it's just such a nice level of contrast here. And it's another benefit to the quartet sort of form here because you can have a very distinct rhythm section while everyone else does their thing. And next we get the track Kathy's Waltz. This track is kind of a burner. And the star of the show, again, is Brubeck because his soloing just is nuts. And I'm not one for piano solos in jazz too often. Sometimes I do think they're a bit repetitive. Sometimes I do think that they don't do as much as they should. The label ECM, or Edition of Contemporary Music, if you will, has had a lot of albums over the past few years where it's a trio of a pianist, a bass, and a drummer. And that kind of shows favoritism in terms of melodic content, because you really don't get to appreciate the minimalist parts that the bass can provide, because I think a bass can really explore texture in a really interesting way, but the piano doesn't really explore texture that well on a lot of these ECM releases this year. But don't think of that with Brubeck. Brubeck is a master of his craft, and he has never let go for even a moment on this album. Sure, he'll get quieter, sure, he'll get slower, and sure, he'll switch from these pounding thick chords and polyrhythms into something more minimalist and melodic, but it just shows how masterful he is. It shows a wide range of emotion and actual passion behind his project. But what's funny about this track is that it starts in 4/4, and it is really smooth until Paul Desmond on the alto sax kind of coasts through and sort of escorts the whole thing into the 3/4 section. And it is an incredibly pleasant track, but if you pay a little bit of attention, you notice that it goes sort of back into 4/4 as Brubeck will play in 4/4 over to the 3/4 section. And if you struggle to understand how that works, I couldn't name a better track that I've heard in my life that does it better than Kathy's Waltz. I think it really fits the sort of idea that you're going for. And if you're having trouble understanding how that works, just listen to it and you'll get it. And this is followed by the track Everybody's Jumpin', which you'd expect to be like a total burner, really fast, aggressive, even syncopated track, but you get something a lot more chill. And it starts pretty summery. It reminds me a little bit of Coltrane's playing on My Favorite Things, where he'll go into the more elongated solos. Here, it's the whole quartet that supports this sort of sound and feeling. And there's a lot of playful dynamics here and a whole lot of interesting color thrown into all the chords here. And Brubeck's solo is just incredible. He actually ups the tempo by an insane amount. It starts off with this summary part, and of course the track's called Everybody's Jumping, so there has to be a sort of jump or a jolt in speed, and it just winds up probably only about a minute in before it just accelerates. And there's another drum solo here, which is a little bit similar to the Take 5 solo, and it is just fantastic. It's a much shorter one though. It flows very well, and it doesn't hang on too long, and it contrasts with Brubeck's solo pretty effectively, I believe. And this album ends with the track Pickup Sticks. This is probably Eugene Wright, the bassist's highlight of a track here. His walking bass line is gripping. It's probably his best part on this whole album here. It's very engaging. And this track, more than anything here, is oozing with coolness. It's probably the track you came for if you've never heard any track on this album and you want to get into some cool jazz. It fits the bill perfectly. The piano and sax trade off solo parts so well, and it's probably the best feature of this track. It doesn't really reinvent the wheel in terms of cool jazz, but it's so slick that it's really an undeniable track. And you do get a little bit of energy added at the end of the track here when Brubeck's solo goes into these really heavy pounding chords. It's probably the most aggressive playing of the whole track here, and it really ties the whole thing together. And it kind of shows that this album is really not to be messed with. And it's really nice how it just wraps up perfectly like that. It just, every track has something different to say. Every track has something different to show off. The solo wing goes super well. The rhythm section is so tight, and yet it all feels so relaxed and so cool, which I believe is the purpose of cool jazz. But I could be wrong, because I waited till the end of the review to say this, but I don't know very much about jazz. But what I do know is that this album is simply sublime, but it's also based and red-pilled. So that's my final rating. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like this album, can't say you can support Dave Brubeck anymore, but buy the vinyl, buy the CD, buy it on cassette, whatever you listen to it right now, because it's an incredible piece of jazz, and it's a good way to get into the genre. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd appreciate it. Like and subscribe. Comments, questions, and concerns down below. I'll respond, I promise, unless it's something I don't find that important, which then I won't respond. Maybe I'll just give it a like or something. But my social media will be in the description below if you'd like to follow any of that, or join my Discord page where we're starting to talk about the albums of the year, or just music in general, because it's what we do. And, that's about it. So I hope you guys are doing well out there. Have a good day. Bye.